Space Marine 2. In a year where co-op games are once again taking over, Space Marine 2 might be able to dethrone Helldivers for being the best co-op game of this year. If your YouTube algorithm is anything like mine, Space Marine content came out in the masses from every YouTuber you can think of. So naturally, now that we have tons of new content to work with, we can form a general synopsis of whether or not this game is good. So if you're new here, this is a video series where I like to look at as many reviews or impressions on a video game so you don't have to. That way we can all get one generalized synopsis in a singular area. This can range from the literal state of the game on whether or not you should buy it, as well as just kind of the general opinion of it on the internet. I'm doing all this so y'all don't have to. Without further ado, let's talk about it.
We demolished that Carnifex brothers.
I have literally created a Venn diagram right in front of me. So if you see me looking at my monitor, I'm just kind of like reviewing my notes that I've written, but in all honesty, I'm just going to come out right out the gate and say it. When I say this game is being universally praised, that is no exaggeration. That is no hyperbole. I have only found 2 or 3 negative things to say about this game, and granted, some of them might be considered big negative things to say, but we'll get into that when we get into that. This game is people love this game. I'm going to tell you that right now, but let's go ahead and get into it. So there are 2 things I want to talk about immediately. They're kind of short, so I'm going to get these short positives out of the way, and then we can go on to the nitty-gritty stuff. For starters, I am a fan of TTRPGs and Warhammer in general. If you aren't even remotely close to that, this game is going to be one of the most impressive games you've ever played in your entire life. I don't think it's too early to say that this genuinely might be the most accurate representation of some type of media made into a video game. I'm not just talking Warhammer, I'm talking in general. The lore and the 1-to-1 ratio of just the universe and the source material is magnificent in this game. They give such subtle details inside of the world. You can see the swarms of Tyranids just kind of running out of buildings, even the towering skyscrapers that you see as you're just kind of walking across these cities. Just the small little details, like if you're walking past just a group of humans, you could see like the stare at you in awe as like a literal Space Marine is walking by, and like some of them are even kneeling. You could feel like you're an actual Space Marine. So you're gonna love that straight out the gate. And the second short part is gonna be about the story, which I do know kind of sucks. I know probably a lot of people were expecting like a decent amount of story content. However, it's actually the exact opposite. The majority of the YouTubers, not even the majority, all of them.
Now here's the thing. We were not allowed to capture our own footage of the campaign mission. We just weren't allowed to do that.
However, they were able to give their impressions of the story that they played, and I will say, like similar to last time, all 10 YouTubers described this as a well-written story. So all elements of this game, as far as gameplay-wise, seems amazing. Now that that short stuff is out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of the praises about this game. So within this vertical slice, there are 3 game modes that the YouTubers were actually able to play. The dedicated story mode, the 3-player co-op that was kind of similar to Left 4 Dead, Back 4 Blood, Helldivers, stuff like that, as well as the 6v6 multiplayer that only a few of them got to be able to play. And I'll talk more about that because that is where the majority of the negatives come out, but we'll get into that later in the video. So one aspect of the story mode that they were able to talk about, which is why I kind of said they can kind of talk about it, is the gameplay. And the best way I can describe kind of like that single player combat is it kind of a mix between World War Z and Gears of War. Saber Interactive did make this game, and they were the people responsible for making World War Z, so you can kind of feel that and the inspiration with the Tyranids going into this game. But the grounded, raw nature and the weight comes from that Gears of War. Within the single player mode, you can upgrade your character as time goes on, as well as pick up different weapons and stuff like that. There isn't really a class in the story mode. You can kind of mix things together, whether that be weapons or abilities. At one point, you can carry a flag that helps your teammates. And another point, you can literally carry a jetpack where you can fly around and literally stab the ground. You can mix and match everything into the campaign mode. However, the majority of the compliments and the praise that came from this game was from the co-op. The majority of the YouTubers talked about this spot more specifically than any other section. The co-op mode is where this game really shines at its creativity. And if anyone played the first Space Marine, one of the biggest complaints that people had with that game is that the game got very repetitive very quickly. And I do think that to a certain degree, they kind of handled that well inside of this game's co-op, and we'll get more into that as to why. For starters, there are 6 separate classes that you can play inside Space Marine 2. You can play as Tactical, Assault, Vanguard, Bulwark, Sniper, and Heavy. All 6 of these classes play vastly different from each other, offering completely different playstyles for you as well as your teammates. There's a really good synergy between solo abilities and kind of teammate abilities where they connect together, which one of the biggest things about these co-op games is a lot of the times their abilities are very self-oriented. This game definitely does have a lot of abilities where if I do something, it impacts my teammates as well. So that's really good to see. But like I said before, one of the biggest questions that we're asking is how is this game going to kind of counteract that repetitive nature that Space Marine 1 had? And in all honesty, it's the upgrade system within this game. There are 3 separate regions of upgrades within this game. It starts off with the characters, to which it then goes to the classes, to which it then goes to the weapons. Each have their own upgrade system on top of the difficulty meter that completely changes the game based off of literally every aspect about the game. So for starters, in the very top layer, we have the actual classes that you can choose. Those classes completely alter the way the gameplay is played. And within those classes, you have specific weapons and abilities that you can alter and change depending on what your playstyle is. As well as those weapons that you choose, you can upgrade them to even have those weapons play differently than anyone else. Not only is the weapon customizable as far as like skills and attributes, your character is as well. This was almost a red flag for me that not a lot of the YouTubers talked about. The upgrades for the character are all percentage based, and I understand that probably a few of you out there are probably cringing because you kind of know what I said. You're not gaining new abilities when you upgrade your character, and generally speaking, that adds to a repetitive nature, kind of what Space Marine 1 had. However, I do think the upgrades on the weapons kind of just counteract that. So that's kind of why I was like it was a yellow flag. My ears definitely perked up a little bit when I heard it, but the fact that you can upgrade your weapons and it alters your gameplay entirely, my concerns went out the window immediately. Also, I almost completely forgot about this last part about the weapons. The weapons have different rarity levels that also change how they, 1, visually look, and 2, actually function. So that adds to that, development of the game as you go forward. The more games you play, obviously, the higher rarity you're going to get, resulting in you playing the game differently, adding to that replayability. Also, speaking of customization, I'm not going to make this too long because it's just kind of self-explanatory. The Space Marines in this game are highly customizable. Anything you can think about as to what you would want, you can put on them. So you can personalize this to the sky and back. It is honestly kind of crazy how much the customization is. And the last thing that kind of adds that whole replayability is the difficulty meter within this game. The difficulty slider within this game is very similar to that of like Helldivers, if you guys have played that before. If you were playing on the hardest difficulty, you have seen some enemies that you would have never seen if you stayed towards the lower tier of easy and like moderate difficulties in Helldivers. This game is similar. I guess the question that we need to ask now and going forward is, how much is it going to change? Is it going to be able to actually keep us, entertained and actually like fixated on the game long enough to where we can replay it multiple times without getting bored? That's kind of the question we're asking with this game right now. But once again, every sign says yes, it will. So we've talked about the story mode a little bit. We've talked about the co-op mode a little bit. Now we're going to get into the online capabilities of this game. As I stated before, this is where the majority of the negatives come from. And this was kind of a universal standard for every YouTuber that I watched. For starters, the online in this game, I'm not even talking about the multiplayer 6v6, the online inside of the co-op is absolutely abysmal.
Also, the game handles online a bit wonky right now, but this is for the preview. People were able to randomly join my game, and there doesn't seem like there's any system to particularly close that down.
After over more than an hour of attempting to play co-op with someone else, the game would just not load the level. The other guy I was playing with said he did manage to get a co-op session up and running at one point, but only once.
What's crazy is that despite the fact that it was literally a co-op mode, the majority of the YouTubers that I watched all played the co-op mode by themselves because it was so difficult trying to get their friends to come inside.
Pause.
Here's hoping that maybe that they were just playing on an earlier version of the game that didn't have these capabilities as up to date as the newer version. But, having difficulty joining your friend 1 month before the game comes out, that's kind of a red flag to my opinion. That's definitely something to look out for. On top of the fact that one of the biggest red flags that I do think I need to mention, I might get some flack for this because I understand there's probably some elitists out there, which, whatever. Go ahead, roast me in the comments, I do not care. The co-op in this game is also being promoted as a way to play by yourself as well. You can play the single player campaign by yourself, and you can play the co-op mode by yourself. The only catch is the co-op mode when you play it by yourself is significantly worse and significantly harder if you were to play it with your co-op friends. Now, naturally, people out there are going to be like, yeah, duh, it's a co-op mode. But the point is if you're promoting your game to have a single player aspect to it inside of the co-op mode, that single player version needs to be playable. This was a big complaint that I had about Helldivers as well. One of Helldivers' biggest marketing points is that you can play the game by yourself, but the fact of the matter is that game was abysmal to play by yourself with how difficult it is. Because the game doesn't scale differently if you're playing by yourself. And one thing that makes it worse when you're playing by yourself is that the AI, specifically the AI and the bosses, when you're playing by yourself, only attacks player characters, which means that the two NPCs that you're playing with don't get attacked at all. So the boss fights in this game, if you're playing by yourself, are significantly harder. So that's just kind of a small pet peeve I have. I do think that if you are going to promote a solo mode, even within the co-op mode, you need to scale the co-op mode correctly for when only one person plays it. That's just my personal beef. I slapped the hell out of my microphone right there. Like I said, that one's more of a pet peeve. I understand probably people out there are gonna probably be mad at me, and let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments. Am I tripping over that? I personally think that that's a big deal. So the next red flag that I did see within the video game that surprisingly not a lot of them are talking about is the fact that right now, as we're watching this video, there was actually supposed to be a beta for the 6v6 multiplayer. I'm kind of waving a red flag here, or at the very least a yellow flag, because the co-op mode is having a hard time connecting 3 people. I can't even imagine how hard of a time it's going to have connecting 12. Especially with the fact that there has been no stress tests for the multiplayer. That's kind of what the beta is for, to make sure that the multiplayer can run properly when the game is fully released. Since there was no beta, this game hasn't been stress tested to the general masses, so a part of me kind of believes that when this multiplayer does come out, it might be really buggy in ways that they just didn't see, because they didn't give it to hundreds of thousands of players that wanted to play it. So we're going to have to wait and see once that comes out, so be a little cautious with that. Do know that if you're buying this game for the multiplayer, it has not been tested in a beta. It was actually canceled for the open beta, and the majority of people have not got to play it. There is gameplay being shown right now. This has been multiplayer gameplay that I've shown, but the general masses have not played this yet. So I'm just asking, be cautious. Oh, I am so stupid. I almost forgot about one of the most important red flags of all. There are microtransactions. This was something that was hinted at before the game come out. I'm not speaking English correctly. And a lot of people speculated on what the microtransaction system was going to be inside of this game. They already stated that there wasn't going to be a battle pass, and they already stated that it wasn't going to be microtransactions, just large-scale DLC, all being cosmetic. If you are kind of anti-microtransaction and anti-spending your money, be on the lookout, because there are YouTubers saying that this game does have paid microtransactions and the customization is locked behind a paywall, and there's another side of the YouTube that's stating that all of these things can be earned with in-game credits. I'm going to put clips of them saying that so you guys don't know I'm just speaking out of my ass.
I did, however, notice a few of the recoloring options were locked behind DLC. About 20% of the recoloring options I saw were DLC specific.
Today, those are not purchasable with real money. I don't know if that will change. I don't know if I've just missed something that said they can be purchased, but as far as I'm aware today, those are only achievable by completing missions within the game.
Kind of wait and see what the monetization system is going to be, because in all honesty, I don't think any of us truly know what it is either at this moment. But other than the fact that there's like some server issues or connectivity issues for that, there is not a single negative I found about this game. This game, genuinely speaking, if they can muster up... What's up, girl? She's right there. How you doing? She just walked into my room. Look at her. She's the best dog ever. But in all honesty, if they can fix up these co-op issues and the server issue before the game comes out, this is no exaggeration when I say that this game could very well be a Game of the Year nominee. For sure be a multiplayer Game of the Year nominee. I am not joking there. There are so many good aspects about this game that I feel like a lot of people are going to have a really good time playing. My personal pick for multiplayer Game of the Year was Helldivers 2. After looking at the gameplay that these people have showed out, all 10 of these YouTubers that I watched, this could beat it. I'm personally rooting for it because I've been kind of pushing this agenda for a minute now. I do think that multiplayer games, and more specifically co-op games, need to make a comeback. Kind of just like mindless fun. We had Lethal Company last year, we had Helldivers this year, and we have this game now. I do think it's time for that just mindless fun co-op game genre to come back. I feel like Left 4 Dead was the last one that stuck with us for a very long time. Helldivers obviously skyrocketed, but then Sony shot themselves in the foot. This game has the ability to be the next Left 4 Dead. It genuinely does. So I'm excited for it. I think that whether or not this game is going to be a long laster is going to come up on whether or not they can obviously push back that repetitive nature that the first game had. And simply put, that's just going to come from how much content is inside of the game. But other than that, that's what 10 YouTubers have to say about Space Marine 2. What do you guys think? Y'all excited for this game? Do you think it's going to win Game of the Year? Let me know in the comments. My dog is putting her head on my lap. That is, I want to go for a walk. I'm going to pee on your floor if you don't, hurry up in the next 10 seconds. So I will see all y'all later. I am Father Poochie. Until the next one. Peace.